now we've been talking about the sexual assault and molestation charge or accusations when it comes to Senator or candidate Roy Moore. Now, Moore, he was a terrible person with terrible views even before we found out about the molestation, right? The fact that he's a child molester that preys on people from the ages of 14 to 17 years old. Now, again, he's got other terrible views, and I want to talk about those, right? Now, recently I talked about a rally where he had brought up the issue of slavery. Now, his comments, when you're taken in context, are basically like, well, look, back in the days when when America was great, is when we had strong families, right? And we also just happened to have slavery. So, okay, well, full stop on that one. The families weren't exactly strong if you broke them apart. Sure, maybe families were strong for some, right? Some people's families were stronger back in that time, but African Americans, they did not have strong families because they were routinely ripped apart as children were bought and sold from their parents, and families literally ripped apart. He ignored that when he talked about slavery, but he thinks that that time in American history somehow was a time when America was great or better than it was today, which is disgusting. Now, another piece in context that puts that, or I should say that puts that comment in context is the fact that he wasn't even asked about slavery. He just brought it up on his own. Well, that's weird. Why would you bring that up? Yeah, even though we had slavery at that time, America was fantastic. Okay. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, there's another sound recording that's been dug up by CNN's K-File. Now, this is a 2011 radio interview with something called the Aroostook Watchmen. Now, the Aroostook Watchmen is a far-right radio program. Never heard of it. Now, the host of this is one of those sovereign citizens. So basically, this guy's like, well, hey, U.S. law doesn't apply to me. So I can go and do whatever I want because I don't believe the law should apply to me at all. That's weird. And it's also weird that you're talking to somebody who was a judge and now who is wanting to be a senator, right? So this is somebody who's supposed to be law and order, talking to somebody who doesn't believe the law should apply to him. Wonderful. I wonder if they understand irony at all. It doesn't seem like it. So what did they talk about? Well, they talked about, among other things, Constitution and what amendments that they would just absolutely love to shred. Let's take a listen.
Personally, I would like to see an amendment that says all the amendments after 10.
Yes. That would eliminate many problems. You know, people don't understand how some of these amendments have completely tried to wreck the form of government that our forefathers intended. Specifically, I think it's the 17th Amendment election of senators.
That's right. The 17th Amendment needs to be repealed.
All right, so for those of you who don't know or might not know what the 17th Amendment stands for and what they actually want to get rid of, well, this 17th Amendment basically made it so that you could directly elect your senators. So that actually is more democratic. And that's small d democratic, by the way, allowing you to elect your own senator from your own state. And now this guy, the Aroostook Watchmen, and Mr. Moore, they're like, no, we need to get rid of the 17th Amendment because fuck democracy. We don't really care about your ability to vote. See, the way that it worked before is that your senator, before the 17th Amendment, was just appointed by somebody. Now, it could be appointed by people with wealthy interests, right, that are bought. Now, don't get me wrong, our senators today are also bought, but at least we have some sort of voice, and at least we can actually fix that problem. What he's saying is, no, let's eliminate the constitutional amendment that allows this voting of senators. We're gonna fix this problem of corruption with less democracy. Where I'm in favor of fixing it with more democracy and actually getting the money out of politics so that the senators actually represent the people. Again, Roy Moore does not agree. Now, it's funny. Again, the Aroostook Watchmen is one of the right-wingers, of course, that are just, again, like, we don't care about democracy. It's very, very clear, right? And ironically, here comes Roy Moore, again, running for the Senate. The same thing, of course, that he would love to change, because he would love to be appointed to the Senate. Oops. So there's the 17th Amendment. Wait till you get a load of what he thinks about the 14th.
People also don't understand, and from being from the South, I bet you get it, the 14th Amendment was only approved at the point of a gun.
Yeah, it had very serious problems with its approval by the states.
I believe that the 14th Amendment is what they strangle us with. I believe the 14th Amendment makes us not state citizens, not sovereign individuals, but owned by the federal corporation. I believe that is the way the 14th Amendment has turned out.
Well, the danger in the 14th Amendment, which was to restrict, has been a restriction on the states using the first 10 amendments, buying through the 14th Amendment, to restrict the states from doing something that the federal government was restricted from doing, and allowing the federal government to do something which the first 10 amendments prevented them from doing. If you understand the incorporation doctrine used by the courts and what it meant, you'd understand what I'm talking about.
Okay. No, what I understand from that is that, again, he's saying that, oh, the 14th Amendment gives too many rights. Why do we have to have a 14th Amendment? Well, look, the 14th Amendment basically guarantees and enshrines due process, right? It also grants equal protection to everybody under the law, especially for freed slaves, because that's primarily what it did. It gave people, African Americans who were former slaves, citizenship. And here's Moore saying, oh, the 14th Amendment, so many problems. I wonder if one of those problems has to do with black people being considered citizens. That's not all. He said get rid of the 11th through the 27th, gone. That includes the 13th Amendment, which effectively abolished slavery. The 14th, as I mentioned, the 17th, as I mentioned, the 15th Amendment, which granted African Americans the right to vote, and the 19th Amendment, which also granted women the right to vote. He wants all of that completely gone. That's who Roy Moore is. When you guys go to the polls in Alabama tonight to cast your vote, remember who this is. And if you agree with him, and if you agree that, hey, man, look, I don't think black people or women should be able to vote. I don't think they should be protected equally under the law. And I don't want democracy. You know what? I don't want to have to vote for Roy Moore. I just want him being appointed by the oligarchs. That's who I want. That's what I want. Well, then, if you vote for that, don't be surprised at what you get.